Okay, so morning. My name is Abanda Chisomo. So today we're going to look at the basic operations of a computer. Okay, so I think by now, I'm sure by now we know what a computer is. Okay, so we're going to look at how does a computer operate. So the basic operations of a computer. Um, Normally we look at the three basic operations, which are input, process, and output. So these are the three main basic operations of a computer: the input, the processing, as well as the output. Okay, so under input, um, okay, so we start with the input device or the input operation. So under input, basically, this involves the reception of instructions from the external devices. And these are instructions which are installed or which are stored in the memory. Okay, so the input device basically just there to receive information as well as store it in readiness or awaiting for the next instruction which will be given. So when you look at the input devices, examples of input devices, one of them is the keyboard. The keyboard is one of the examples of input devices. Apart from the keyboard, we also have what we call a microphone. So a microphone, basically the same microphone which is used by musicians and stakeholders when they're doing presentations and so on, is one of the examples of input devices. Okay, so apart from that, from the input devices, we go to the processing. Under processing, this is where the information, so the data which has been received through the input devices is processed. So under the processing part, this is where now we find the CPU. The CPU, which is known as Central Processing Unit. So the Central Processing Unit, this is where instructions which have been received from the external devices through the input devices and they are stored in the memory. This is where now all the operations and the magic, everything happens. Okay, so it is at this point where we have got a number of operations which take place. One of them is what we call the arithmetic. The arithmetic operation. Okay, so under arithmetic operation, what we're looking at is the calculations. Okay, so the calculations which take place in a computer. For instance, I'll give an example of a calculator. Okay, if you get a calculator, you do the arithmetic there, the mathematics, or if you're doing addition, subtraction, multiplication, all that happens in what we call the central processing unit. And this is the part of the computer where all the instructions which are received from the first part, which we're looking at, which is what? The input devices, which we're referring to as the external devices. The information or the instructions received from here and they're brought in the memory where they're stored, they are being processed where? In the central processing unit, which is the processing. The one of the basic operations of a computer. So it's at this point where we find the CPU and it's responsible for arithmetic operations and also the flow, the control flow of instructions. So it's also at this point where how instructions basically how instructions are moved from one point to the other, from one registry to the other registry. It's at this part where everything happens. Okay, apart from that, we have another basic operations which we are referring to as the output device. So it's a process. We start from the top, which is the input. The information which is received from the external devices is received and is stored in the memory. From there, it's processed, depending with the type of information that has been received. So from this part to this part, what we have is what we call data. This is unprocessed information. What we get is unprocessed information, and when it's processed, it now comes to the part where we're calling output. It's at this point where now we're looking at examples of output devices. We're talking about the monitor. Yeah. So let me just flip here to the next page. So output. Under output, what we have now is the monitor. We have speakers and so on. So we have speakers. For instance, remember we said under input, one of the examples we said was what? A microphone. Okay, so the input device, which is the microphone, when someone speaks to the microphone, then the information is gotten as an output through the what? Through the speakers. We said one of the examples is what? A keyboard. So when someone types on the keyboard, where do we see that information or that data is through what? The monitor. So these are what we refer to as the output devices. And these are the devices which are responsible of displaying, okay, or giving out, printing out information to users. Okay, so basically this is what or how the computer operates. So we say input. So it's through the input, it gets to the processing and gets to output. Okay. And